Hello, Patreon backers. Welcome back to another Patrons Ask GN. You can leave your questions in the Patreon Discord. Quick note, we've had a lot of those lately, so I'm doing my best, kind of adding one or two more questions than normally to these. Adding more questions to the other Ask GNs. I'm trying to keep up. Just bear with me. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. It's not necessarily because I filtered it out. It's probably just because I legitimately didn't see the question or something like that, because there are a lot. So anyway, first one is from TruckerNerd, who asked, I'm looking at getting out of driving and would like to do something I actually enjoy. Are there any good online courses I can take in my free time to get some knowledge before quitting my job? I currently work 80 hours a week, so actual school is a little out of question. I mean, first of all, any business is going to value an employee who is that dedicated. Now, hopefully you can cut down your hours, but if you know a good amount about computers and it's relevant to whatever job you're applying for, honestly, as an employer, if someone walked in and said, I work 80 hours a week at my current job, I'm dedicated, I try hard, I'm willing to put in the time, then for the most part, I might not even care how technical their background is if I feel like I can train them. Because at that point, you're like, okay, so 40 is not going to be a problem then. And obviously, you want to keep people not doing 80 hours, because I'll do it, but it's a little different when you own the business and it's your life. But for an employee, you don't want to do that. So I'm not going to, obviously, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that fact alone is extremely valuable. Not trying to be like a job coach or anything, but just from my perspective, if someone says that to me, I'm instantly listening, because I know that I can compete with their current job and give them like half of the hours and give them good quality employment. And if it seems like this person is trainable, then I don't know, I can look past not having things like certifications if I feel I can get them up to speed. So something you should look into is, first of all, I don't know a ton about online courses, but I'm not a college graduate even, dropped out to do this at some point. So I know there are sites like Lynda, there are lots of coding websites if you're interested in programming, all kinds of, Lynda is one of the ones that I'm more familiar with, but all kinds of programming websites. If you're more interested in technical stuff, kind of like what we do, I would recommend that you read old Anantech articles, anantech.com by Anand Shimpi, I think is how you pronounce his name, but the editor-in-chief at the time. He's moved on, he works at Apple now, but he is one of the luminaries in our space. He sort of created technical reporting in the sense that it exists now. Scott Wasson, formerly Tech Report founder and editor-in-chief, currently at AMD. Scott Wasson's another really good read if you go find his old content. And I'd recommend, this is for everyone, I'd recommend just going back and reading the Turning Point reviews. So Athlon 64, that's a fun one to read from Scott or from Anand. And you could read about the Pentium 4, you could read about the first PCIe graphics cards, read about Voodoo versus NVIDIA. Those like architectural content pieces from them are a really good way to learn low-level information about the processors and the silicon if you want to know that kind of stuff. If you don't need to know it, that's fine, but having the background will help you get employed just because you'll be able to speak at a more technical level if you're trying to get a technical job. Now, there's a lot of jobs in computer hardware, so some of the things that a lot of people don't really think about unless they're in the industry would be things like the people we interface with. So technical marketing, often don't need a degree for that, often don't need to be super technical with architecture, but be technically minded. So someone who is capable of marketing a product and writing review guides about it, so maybe you have some writing capabilities, and is also capable of doing testing, but not someone who knows how it's engineered necessarily, but can interface with the engineers to translate what the engineers are saying to people like media. Often you're talking to people like us, or maybe mainstream media need a bit more translation and dumbing down. So tech marketing is a really good job position and role, I think, that a lot of people overlook. Technical PR is another one. Anyone who can actually build the computers and is interested in it is instantly at the top of the list to get hired by any of the companies we work with as technical PR or marketing. Because a lot of the times you'll get marketing people, you'll get PR people, but to mix that with building computers is rare. And it's a really small industry, so once you get in somewhere, there's a good chance you stay in. So I would look into jobs like that. Test technicians very often don't need degrees and don't need to do a ton of writing. That's typically more technical writing. So you design a test case, you execute the steps, you decide, you mark whether the product passed or failed, and then you write a report of how it failed, if it did, and rate it for severity, and work with the software developers or the engineers, hardware engineers, to retest continuously till it's fixed. So that's another really good position. It doesn't necessarily require a degree. If you can't get one because you don't have the time, that's cool. There's plenty of jobs out there for you in this field. Just study up first. Reading stuff online is a great way to do it. But yeah, for more detail, YouTube videos are great, but we can't go into a ton of depth. And frankly, very few people touch the level of depth that Scott used to do and that Shimpy used to do. So check out their articles. Next one is from KeshIsBae92, who says, any plans of maybe podcasts like Awesome Hardware or WAN Show teaming up with Der Bauer? I don't see you as a once-a-week streaming person, but something like once a month. Discuss hardware news without much of a fuss, have a beer or two. Presentation-wise, it would be interesting to see, and I always enjoy when you two are in video together. And that's cool. We might be in a video with him soon. Both of us are very busy. I don't know that we'd be able to arrange that, particularly with the time zones. I think he tends to work more normal hours, so time zones do make it difficult. But as far as podcasts or things like the WAN Show or Awesome Hardware, I really like those shows that those guys do. We don't currently have any plans to compete with them. We kind of leave that to our hardware news, like compressed format. And so it's a bit longer than Tech Linked, and it's shorter than the live streams. So I kind of leave it there. We are planning to do podcast style things, or I don't know if that's the right word, but basically sit-down discussions with experts in the industry as we move into this office I've been mentioning on and off for the last few episodes. So we're planning to do stuff like it, but not exactly that currently. And I do want to get Der Bauer out to the office and build Zoid at some point. Next one, Stalyoni says, when do those new noctua 140 fans come out that you saw at computex? They didn't have a date at the time. I think they were kind of loosely targeting end of year, maybe early 2019. So apparently a lot of engineering went into it. They didn't just like scale it up, they refactored it. And I guess that takes a while. So they were telling me at best case is maybe end of year. So that's the best I got. Next question. KeshIsBae says, hi Stevie, recently mentioned using XTU and Ryzen Master for overclocking in one of your videos. I was wondering if there are any major disadvantages or differences in using software instead of BIOS for overclocking. Yes, to both. The advantage is speed. So I prefer BIOS always, just because I don't know if it's like an old school thing or what, but I feel more secure that the settings I'm applying are actually applying. Whereas software, I don't always trust it to apply what I tell it to properly. So that's a concern. But otherwise, speed. So working with Hades Canyon, we just couldn't tune some of the stuff in BIOS. We had to go through XTU. Another benefit, XTU will report the if you're hitting power limits or not, which is useful for when you reboot to turn off those power limits, because BIOS won't tell you that because it's not doing any load at the time. You can change the multiplier a bit faster. You can change the voltage a bit faster. I do prefer BIOS for sure, just because I trust it. But I think if the software is actually applying the settings, then it would be faster. And then I would take those settings and finalize it in BIOS once I've rough tested them in software. Zeta, is there an area you wish you knew more about or have yet to learn and are eager to? Power probably is the big one, power supplies. Working on reviewing those. I think the most interesting thing to me that I want to learn more about is architecture on the GPU side. I was working on this for a while. I still need to, but I have a couple of GPU architecture books. I started them. The trouble is, with all the stuff we do, it is sort of difficult to prioritize things sometimes. And so every time new architectures come out, I take as much time as I can, talk to as many engineers and PMs as I can, and learn about the architecture side from them so that I can better understand the actual product. And that is difficult and time consuming. And that is the area that I'm trying to learn the most about and I'm the most excited about in terms of individual components, I think. Talpss Recreational Nukes, last one. Inspired by Zeta's question, where did you learn everything you know about PC stuff? The same way all of you did, I guess. Just building computers and running into blue screens and problems and getting interested in things like overclocking and doing that and looking up forums and guides and reading forums. The tech report, Anantech, the Anantech forums are really good. Overclock.net is good. Stuff like that. It's just a lot of reading. These days, it's a lot of exposure to experts. So you run into people like Der Bauer, like Bill Zoid, Scott Wasson, people at AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, and we're lucky now where they'll recognize us and come up and be like, hey, you might be interested to know whatever the thing is and explain something to us. Or we've had, one of the things I like doing lately is at a show, like a more technical show, if an engineer recognizes me and comes over to talk, one of the things I always ask them is, first of all, I'm surprised they watch our content, but one of the things I always ask them is, okay, so out of all the stuff I've said about the products you've worked on and all this, the speculation I've had, what is something you think I got really wrong? Was there anything? So far, no one said I've gotten anything like horrendously wrong about their product, so that's good. But sometimes, we go off the path a bit and speculate on, okay, what does this data mean? How do we interpret this? What part of the architecture is causing this? Is it from like unfiltered texture streaming, and so the texture filter rate's a problem, or is it a ROPS problem, or whatever? And I'll sort of pick one of those things logically and talk about it and think that's like a bottleneck. So I like to ask the engineers, was that accurate? Or was I off base? And generally, I'll get answers like, you're kind of going in the right direction, and if I'm lucky, they'll give me more detail. So that's probably the best place for me to learn more stuff right now. But otherwise, in general, reading, not just YouTube videos, but like genuinely reading where people have more space to express what they think, and they have more time to use the correct language than in a video, for example. So I would recommend that approach to learn more. And that is it for this one. So thank you for watching. As always, post your questions in the Patreon Discord, and I'll see you all next time.